I was walking my dog when I started sneezing. I thought it was normal at first, but the sneezing was relentless. I felt compelled to return inside. I was still sneezing and itching by the time I arrived at my apartment on the 5th floor. My wife was home, and I told her I was feeling strange. My tongue was swollen, and my eyes were red and beginning to swell as well. My palms, as well as my neck and back, were itching. She realized I was having an allergic reaction and went to the grocery store across the street to get Benadryl. I began gasping for air and sweating profusely shortly after she left. I texted her that I was in need of an ambulance. There was an ambulance in front of our apartment building, and she begged them to send a member of their crew to help me. They stated that they couldn't split up because they were on another call, but they requested another ambulance. My wife texted me to meet her and the paramedics who were on their way at P2. As my airways swelled shut and I couldn't breathe, I read the text. I collapsed from the chair I was sitting in, the first of 4 deaths that would occur that night. I was enveloped in darkness. There was nothing, no sound, no light. I hadn't been here long when my dog began barking at a high pitch. He was aware of my distress. My consciousness was pierced by the frequency, and I awoke. I couldn't breathe anymore, but I knew I had somewhere to go. I staggered to the front door in order to reach the elevator. I had forgotten to pick up my phone. The elevator was only about 50 to 60 feet away. I made it 5 steps outside my door before gasping for air. This is how I'm going to go out. I remember thinking to myself, really? I collapsed to the floor in the hallway after being unable to breathe, and what happened next changed my life. My eyes closed in death and opened in a beautiful, radiant, white limitless light as I took my last breath. It was perfectly clear. My physical form was no longer that of a human. I was known as a light body. I knew because I could see myself in the mirror. It was as if I were looking in the mirror. I found myself being dragged up through the light at a rapid pace. It was as if a powerful, yet gentle and loving force was sucking me through the air. It was as if I were in a cosmic elevator. But I wasn't scared. All I could feel was intense love, and I knew I was on my way home. I was traveling at a high speed when I was stopped by my grandparents who appeared from the void. They were luminous light bodies whose energy I recognized. I could sense them. They were apologetic and wanted to express their regret to me. They told me through telepathy that now that they are on the other side, they understand how much fear I had because I was gay. I had to live in fearful quiet throughout my youth and didn't come out until I was 31. Because I was homosexual, I lived in dread in my own home, afraid that my mother would beat me or kick me out. Being homosexual had a specific stigma attached to it since it implied that my transgression was unique. I was taught as a Southern Baptist in the Bible Belt that I was an abomination destined for the lake of fire. In 2009, I was targeted in a hate crime because I was homosexual, and I was assaulted and left for dead on the street. I understood what my grandparents were saying to me. This apology helped me feel better. They claimed it wasn't my time and that I needed to return. They exuded love with their energy. I accepted their apologies. As I pointed toward the light, I added, "I love you too, but I have somewhere else to go." I shooed them away lovingly. As they followed my desire and returned to the vacuum, they demonstrated a sense of amusement, almost arrogance. I looked up and saw my goal. I was in awe of God. Everything seemed to be occurring at the same time. Every homosexual insult or violent behavior ever instilled onto me flowed through me as I stared up at God in awe. My life events played back in my memory like a movie. As I peered squarely at an almighty, genderless God, I felt a profound sadness. Was this the lake of fire moment? I wondered, would I be sent into hell for being an abomination? With complete humility, I spoke 7 words. "I'm homosexual, would you still love me?" The brilliant, loving light transformed into wings. He swept me into his massive spiritual arms while huddling up the universe. Planets, stars, galaxies, and clusters were all gathered in a cosmic God hug. On a person, the location where I was abducted would be the heart. "You are my child," God whispered as he drew me in for a cosmic hug. "I really like you. I really like you. I really like you. Go tell em." He stated it with a southern drawl. He slapped me on the back like a coach pushing his player to return to the game. My grandparents rushed into the light at that point, and I was sent back into my body. This explained their sense of humor and mild arrogance. They knew what was about to happen. It wasn't easy being thrown back into my body. I felt my body bounce, but I couldn't breathe. My blood pressure has dropped significantly. I was so free on the other side, and here I felt so constrained. I gathered enough momentum to take another 25 steps before collapsing. My wife had been timing me and got concerned when I did not make it down to the P2 floor. She ascended the stairs to the 5th floor. She was racing along our hallway, looking left at the corridor that went to the elevator. She noticed I was on the floor and was unconscious. She took command of the situation and dragged my lifeless, limp corpse the last 25 feet to the elevator. My wife is 5'12", and I am 5'10". During this period, I was completely in the dark. No God. There are no grandparents. There is no lighting. Only blackness. My wife was saying stuff to me to persuade me to hold on. As she escorted us to the elevator, her voice was dejected. I awakened in her arms out of nowhere and told her that I loved her and that I was going home. As she pressed the P2 button on the elevator, I retreated with my lifeless, limp corpse. She pushed the wrong button and the elevator rose. My wife, Malia, screamed for assistance as 2 men entered the elevator. One of the men happened to be an army medic. She said that I had gone into anaphylactic shock and that the paramedics would be meeting us on P2. The army medic placed me on the elevator floor and took command. I have no recall of the elevator journey until I heard the medic scream my name loudly. "I heard you played basketball," he remarked. "Carrie, I heard you played basketball." He emphasized my name and the term basketball. He had reportedly met my wife a few weeks before this occasion, and she had informed him that I was a good athlete. I recall waking up to the most gorgeous grin from a distance. He had been trained to know what to do. I doubt I would have returned if he had been in my face. It would have been terrifying. Then, all of these paramedics came into the elevator and yanked me out. They had no idea what I had gone through in the last 25 minutes. I was awake and breathing, but my body was immobilized. I just felt like a set of eyeballs in a body that was so thick and solid. The paramedics approached me and asked whether I could get up on my own. I glanced at them like if they were mad. I was still speaking telepathically. "No, I can't get up on my own," I said telepathically. "You know where I've been and how hefty and constrained these bodies are. I can't move." They couldn't hear me and I couldn't talk. They stared at me as if I was being difficult and would have to be picked up off the floor. They managed to pull me up to the stretcher after many minutes of my attempting to gather my bearings on where I was and what had transpired. I was taken to the emergency room, treated for anaphylactic shock, and released the next morning. I had never had an allergic reaction to anything before this night. I hadn't done anything different from previous nights. I hadn't eaten anything unusual. I took my dog for his daily walk. I experienced anaphylactic shock 6 more times over the next 20 days. I had to use an EpiPen to save my life. I took 6 more ambulance rides to the emergency room. My entire body was saturated in epinephrine. My head and heart felt like they were about to explode. I was being tested at University Medical to find out why I had gone into anaphylactic shock 7 times in 21 days. Nothing tested positive for an allergic reaction. They still have no idea what caused the anaphylactic shock. It hasn't happened again in the last 3 years. After the ND, I began losing consciousness at random times, and luckily, these episodes occurred when I was at home. I got up from the couch to go to another room one night and felt like I was walking through quicksand. I collapsed to the floor, slammed my head into the closet door, and sliced my head open. I quickly regained consciousness as if nothing had happened. I was being treated for syncope, but no one knew what was causing it. This went on for 1.5 years before my doctor decided to put a monitor on my heart. I wore this monitor for 2 weeks straight and it recorded my heart rhythm. The test results revealed that my heart had been stopping for 9 seconds at a time. As a result, I required a pacemaker right away. In January of 2017, I had a pacemaker implanted. My heart stopped for unknown reasons. I haven't had any other medical problems since this date. Prior to the anaphylactic shock, I was recovering from injuries sustained in a 2009 hate crime. On Sunset BLVD, I was attacked and brutally assaulted. The perpetrator left me for dead on the sidewalk and was never apprehended. This evening, I had an out-of-body experience but did not cross over. I noticed my bloody body on the sidewalk. I recognized the body but remained unconcerned about it. I heard a voice say, "Call 911," and someone asked, "Does she have insurance?" Several people had gathered around me. Because there was a pool of blood on my stomach, people assumed I'd been stabbed. I could see blood pouring from my face and down my arm from above. My arm was crossed over my stomach, where I was resting in a fetal posture. I was out of my body for around 15 minutes, 20 minutes. I recall being back in my body as the paramedics loaded me into the ambulance. When I looked over to the side, They were spraying my blood off the pavement with a high-powered hose. My face was destroyed. My teeth were knocked out. It took 5 months for the swelling to subside sufficiently that surgery could be performed. Over the next 7 months, I underwent 2 face reconstruction surgery. As a result of the fall during the attack, I suffered frozen shoulder. It took 7 years to recover. I acquired PTSD, which wreaked havoc on my mind and body. Thankfully, I have entirely recovered from this medical horror.